You ever laugh at the wrong person? Because this man did. He smirked, rolled his eyes, called her sweetheart in the middle of a murder investigation. She was just a witness, right? Just some black lady who said she saw something. Probably confused, maybe dramatic, definitely not credible, until she pulled out her badge. FBI. And the whole room changed. But before we go further, let me ask, how's your heart these days? You sleeping okay? Knees still clicking when it rains? The grandkids still texting you only when they want something? I hope you're holding up truly, because this story, it's a reminder that sometimes what people think they see in you has nothing to do with who you really are. Sometimes the most underestimated person in the room is the one who came to save it. Her name was Celeste Monroe, and she didn't look like anybody's idea of an FBI agent. She wore her hair in thick natural coils, big hoop earrings, comfortable shoes, not heels. Her voice was low and southern, her laugh loud enough to fill a room. So when she showed up at the crime scene standing quietly behind the perimeter tape, nobody asked her for credentials. They assumed she was a bystander. She let them. That morning, a man had been found dead in the alley behind a jazz club in New Orleans, shot twice, no weapon recovered, no witnesses, except her. She had seen everything, but when she stepped forward and said, "I saw what happened," the lead detective, a tall, gray man named Clay Hennings, didn't even write her name down. "Ma'am, we appreciate the enthusiasm," he said, "but we're looking for real witnesses." She raised an eyebrow. "What kind do you prefer?" He smiled, condescending. "The kind that don't sound like they watched it on TV." She blinked, then reached into her jacket, pulled out her badge. FBI Special Agent Celeste Monroe. The silence that followed could have swallowed the whole street. Detective Clay Hennings stood frozen, his pen dangling midair, like someone had hit pause on his entire worldview. Celeste didn't flinch. She handed him her credentials. FBI, active duty, criminal division, embedded. She had been working undercover on a separate case until the murder happened right in front of her. He cleared his throat. "I didn't realize." "You didn't ask," she replied, crisp as iron. The scene changed fast. Local officers suddenly stepped aside. Clipboards were offered. A chair was pulled up. And for the first time all morning, someone said, "Agent Monroe, what did you see?" She laid it out. The victim, a mid-level bookie with ties to a regional laundering ring. The shooter, clean-cut, white shirt, no tattoos, moved like he'd done it before. Celeste had followed him halfway down the block before losing him in the crowd. She even had a partial plate number, every detail precise, sharp, unshakable. Clay scribbled fast, his ego shrinking with every line. But Celeste wasn't there for pride, she was there for answers. And she already smelled rot, not just in the alley, but in the way the cops had originally processed the scene. No canvas, no door-to-door questioning, and the security camera at the corner diner. "Already overwritten," the officer said. Celeste's eyes narrowed. That wasn't incompetence. That was intentional. Back at the precinct, she set up shop, refused the guest desk in the corner, took the main room, open laptop, Post-its, maps. And when she started asking questions, real ones, officers got twitchy. "Ma'am, I don't think that part's relevant." She raised a brow. "Good thing I didn't ask what you think." By dusk, she had the victim's phone records, a list of known associates, and a growing suspicion. Someone inside the department knew this was coming, and someone wanted it buried. "Let me ask you something. What happens when the person they laughed at starts pulling every string in the room? How far do you think they'll go to stop her from unraveling the truth?" 3 days into the investigation, the department's mood had shifted. Eyes didn't meet hers anymore. Voices lowered when she entered. Files suddenly became misplaced. Celeste noticed it all, but she kept moving. She followed the money trail first. The victim's financials were sloppy, deposits too clean, too spaced out, like someone wanted to look guilty but not be caught. She traced one of the transactions to a seafood distributor, a fake front, and guess who showed up on the building's lease? Sergeant Raymond Dorsey, 20-year veteran, respected, decorated, and now suspect. Celeste brought the file to Clay. "Tell me about Dorsey." Clay stiffened. "Ray's a good man." "That's not what the records say." "He's one of ours." Celeste's jaw locked. So was the victim. That night, her hotel room door was left ajar when she returned. Nothing taken, just moved. The kind of movement that says, "We were here. We're watching. Back off." She didn't call for backup. She checked the door, locked it twice, pulled her Glock, and slept with one eye open. The next morning, she found a note slipped under the door. "You ain't from here. You don't know how deep this goes. Stop now, before we bury more than secrets." Celeste folded it, slid it into her pocket, then opened her laptop and sent 2 emails. One to the Bureau, requesting internal affairs access to all recent local case closures. The second to herself, titled, "In case they silence me." But let me ask you this. What would you do if every step toward the truth put your life further in danger? Would you still walk forward or take the safe way out? Celeste didn't request a meeting. She walked straight into Sergeant Dorsey's office at 10:17 a.m., unannounced, folder in hand. He looked up, surprised, but not startled. "Agent Monroe," he said smoothly. "To what do I owe the pleasure?" She shut the door, dropped the folder on his desk. $17,430 wired to a seafood company that's never shipped a single shrimp. He didn't blink. She flipped the page. "Your name's on the lease. The victim was paid through it." Still calm. "Got a lot of paperwork there, Agent. Doesn't mean I killed anybody." "No," she said, "but it means you're laundering, and that means motive." Dorsey leaned back, exhaled, then smirked. "You don't know what kind of city you're poking around in, do you?" Celeste crossed her arms. "Enlighten me." He stood, walked to the window. "This place runs on 2 things, loyalty and silence. You don't get far unless you master both." She stepped closer. "You know what runs the Bureau? Surveillance, subpoenas, and backup that doesn't flinch." He turned, something cold in his eyes now. "You're not the first to come here with a badge and a crusade." Celeste held his stare. "I'll be the last if you don't start talking." He didn't confess, but he didn't deny either, just said, "Be careful who you embarrass in public. Some of them don't shoot twice." Celeste left the office, heart steady but skin crawling. She didn't know which was worse, the threat or the quiet confidence behind it. That afternoon, she filed a formal report to her SAC, special agent in charge. Detailed, documented, clear. Then she called Kyla, her younger sister, a teacher in Baton Rouge. "I might need you to keep a bag ready," Celeste said. "Why?" "Because when the house burns, the fire doesn't stop at one room." That night, her car alarm went off twice, and someone left a dead shrimp on her windshield. No note, just the stench of warning. Let me ask you this. If you were staring into the eyes of corruption that smiled back, would you still press forward? Or would you wonder how long before they turn that smile into your obituary? Celeste received the call at 6:42 a.m. "Agent Monroe, this is Deputy Director Sloan. I just read your file. We're elevating this to a federal task force." Celeste sat upright in bed. "You have full clearance. Use what you need. We're assigning 2 additional agents." It wasn't a favor. It was an alarm. Because now the Bureau believed her. And that meant things were worse than anyone thought. Within hours, Celeste had 2 new faces at her side. Agent Torres, ex-military, no nonsense, eyes like radar. Agent Kim, tech genius, young, precise, and fearless. Together they dug hard. Bank accounts, phone records, surveillance. What they found? Over a dozen suspicious deaths in 3 parishes, all tied to shell businesses. all touched by at least one of 5 trusted police officers. The seafood front was just the tip. They uncovered a whole network: laundering, bribery, protection money, and a private security firm registered to, guess who? Clay Hennings. Yes, the detective who smirked at her on day 1. Celeste stared at the registration document, then whispered, "It was never just about the murder." The team made their move fast. FBI trucks arrived at 4:07 a.m. No sirens, just quiet boots and hard knocks. By noon, 6 officers were in cuffs. Clay was last. He didn't speak as they pulled him from his home, but as he passed Celeste, he paused. "You ruined everything," he muttered. She leaned close. Number Y revealed it. The media exploded. Corruption ring exposed in Southern PD. FBI agent uncovers multi-county crime network. And right in the middle of every headline, Celeste Monroe, the witness they laughed at, the agent they couldn't stop. But I ask you now, if you had the power to unravel the very system that once dismissed you, would you do it? Even if it meant making enemies who never forget your name? They held a ceremony, medals, speeches, polished shoes, cameras flashing. Celeste stood still in her blazer, flanked by agents Torres and Kim. The Bureau called her a model of integrity. The mayor, the same man who once questioned her badge, called her a symbol of accountability. The press labeled her everything from whistleblower to hero. But Celeste? She smiled for the pictures, then went home and sat in the dark for 3 hours. The truth was, she didn't feel triumphant. She felt spent. She'd done her job, exposed the rot, brought men to justice. But she couldn't forget the look in Clay's eyes. Not anger, but certainty. Like he knew someone else would replace him soon enough. The task force offered her a transfer to DC promotion, more pay, a new team. Kyla urged her to go. "You've done what you needed here," she said. "It's time." But Celeste hesitated because part of her knew you don't dig up an old city secret without leaving something of yourself in the dirt. One night, Celeste returned to the alley behind the jazz club, the place where the man had died, the place this whole thing started. She stood in the same spot where she once stood as just a witness and whispered, "You didn't die for nothing." The next morning, she declined the transfer, wrote 2 words on her resignation email. Not yet. She wasn't done, because there were more alleys, more whispers, more women who looked like her being asked to step aside. But let me ask you, when you've changed the system from the inside, do you walk away? Or do you stay and make sure it doesn't grow its poison back? Would you stay? Would you risk becoming the next target just to stop the next crime? Celeste had no badge now, no office, no official mandate, but word spread fast. Within weeks, survivors, mostly women, began to reach out. Whispers in church basements, notes slid under cafe napkins. "Can we talk?" She never said no. One woman, Alondra Tate, was the first to open the door fully. "My brother was killed in '98, shot by 2 officers. They said he reached for a weapon. He had a milkshake in his hand." Celeste listened, took notes. But when Alondra slid over a photocopy of the incident report, Celeste froze. There it was, her uncle's name, one of the responding officers. She excused herself, stepped outside, called Kyla. "You remember Uncle Ray?" she asked, "the one who moved to Florida." "Yeah, he was here longer than we thought." There was a pause. Then Kyla whispered, "You think he was involved?" "I don't think." "I know." That night, Celeste opened the file drawer she hadn't touched in years. Inside, clippings, notes, old bureau reports, and a sealed envelope from her father, marked, "Do not open unless you're ready." She had never opened it until now. Inside, a single page. If you're reading this, then you already know. Ray wasn't just in the system. He helped build the part that broke us. Celeste didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because the next case she had to crack was wrapped in her own blood. Let me ask you now, if the next door you had to knock on had your own family behind it, would you still open it? Would you risk everything to make sure the truth included everyone, even those you once called your own? Celeste didn't hesitate. She requested the sealed archive from the Bureau, internal affairs files involving Officer Raymond Monroe between 1995 and 2002. It took a week, but when it came, the box was heavier than she expected and full of ghosts. Inside were 3 reports, 2 allegations of excessive force, both dismissed, 1 incident of misplaced evidence in a narcotics case, and a confidential memo with her father's name at the bottom. The memo read, "Recommend internal review of Officer R. Monroe. Pattern suggests coordination with off-book security network. Family connections noted. Potential risk to Bureau integrity if promoted." Celeste read it twice, then again. The Bureau had known. So had her father. She called Kyla. "I think Dad kept me close to the Bureau so I wouldn't ask too many questions." Silence. Then Kyla said, "Maybe he was trying to protect you." Celeste shook her head. "Maybe he was trying to protect the name." She met with Alondra again, told her everything, even the part about her uncle. Alondra didn't flinch. "Truth's still truth, Agent. Doesn't care who it's married to." That week, Celeste did something she'd never done. She submitted a formal request to have her uncle's badge stripped retroactively. Not for vengeance, for history. "Because people forget," she wrote, "unless you give them a reason to remember." She didn't get applause. She got silence. Some colleagues stopped answering her calls. A few distant cousins stopped talking to her entirely. But when she woke up the next morning and looked in the mirror, she felt lighter. "But let me ask you something. Would you sacrifice your family's name to honor the truth? Even if it meant standing alone at the family reunion table?" It came in the form of an email. Subject line, "Proposal, Federal Initiative for Civil Witness Integrity." At first, Celeste thought it was a mistake, but the sender, Deputy Director Sloan. The body read, "We've seen what happens when systems ignore the wrong witnesses. We want you to build a unit that ensures it never happens again. Start from scratch. Your rules, your team, you lead." Celeste closed the laptop, sat very still. It was the first time in her entire career someone hadn't just asked her to follow orders, but to set the tone. She flew to D.C. the next week. Boardroom, 12 chairs, 1 empty at the head. She didn't sit. She stood and said, "If we're going to do this, we don't build for politics. We build for the women who whisper their truth behind locked doors. We build for the boys who never got a second question. And we build for every person who was told, 'We don't believe you.'" The room was silent. Then a slow nod from Sloan. "Welcome to the future, Director Monroe." Back in New Orleans, Kyla threw her a small dinner. Fried catfish, red beans, a single candle. "You gonna wear a suit now?" Kyla teased. Celeste laughed. "Only if it's got pockets." Later that night, she sat alone, pulled out the envelope again, the one from her father. On the back, she scribbled a single sentence. "I kept your secret. Now I'm building a world that doesn't need them. Let me ask you this. If they finally gave you the room, the authority, the power, would you know what to build with it? Would you honor those who never got that chance?" The new division opened quietly, no press, no ribbon cutting, just a woman in a modest office setting up a whiteboard. On it, she wrote 3 things. Listen first, question louder. Protect what they call unbelievable. Celeste didn't hang plaques, didn't frame awards, but she did keep one photo, a grainy black and white printout from her first case. The alley, the badge, the smirk that started it all. She taped it to the inside of her desk drawer, because some reminders aren't for the world, they're for the soul. Her first call came from a woman in Georgia. "I saw them do it. but they said I was hysterical. Celeste didn't ask for proof. She asked for time. She asked for detail. And when the woman cried at the end of the call and whispered, "You believe me?" Celeste simply said, "I do, because I've been you." Now let me bring this home to you. Yes, you reading this. Maybe you've never worn a badge. Maybe you've never chased a killer. But maybe, just maybe, you've spoken and been silenced. You've seen and been told you imagined it. You've pointed and been laughed at. And if you have, then you already understand Celeste better than most. Because in every sweetheart, in every eye roll, in every room where they underestimate you, there's an opening, an opportunity to make them choke on their assumptions, to turn the witness into the force, the overlooked into the storm. So if you felt something in this story, don't let it sit like this. Comment, tell me your story. Share this with someone who forgot how powerful they are. Subscribe to our channel, Black Women, because we're not just part of the story, we are the reason it gets told right.